Good morning and welcome to V-Ships. We're glad you're here for the KC case study, Early Lessons in Virtual Internships. We have great panelists we'll introduce you to very soon. But now for some housekeeping. We want for this to be a time of open dialogue and co-learning. And so we'll have time at the end for questions from the audience. We encourage you to submit your questions in the question and answer section at the bottom of your screen. And please use the chat feature also to give thoughts and reactions throughout the roundtable. When chatting, please make sure that you're chatting all panelists and participants for your message to be viewed by fellow attendees. I can see that many of you have already been getting good practice in by letting us know who you are and who you're with. So if you've not yet done so, pop over into that chat. We'd love to see your name and tell us where you are. For instance, I'm Leanne with the DeBruce Foundation in Kansas City. If you encounter any technical issues throughout this, please post a question in the question and answer section, and our meeting facilitators from Wellington will make sure to respond to you promptly. Again, thank you for being here. We're going to kick it off with a poll so that we as the panelists will know a little bit about the audience who is joining us today. So Taylor is going to post a poll at this point in time that's just asking you about where you are on the virtual internship program journey. Take a moment to complete that. You should be able to see that. As you're doing so, I'll go ahead and continue with the fact that you've heard the stats. That's why you're on this webinar today. You know that 75% of college graduates had their plans disrupted in 2020, and that internship offerings were 49% lower than 2019. In March, we began hearing from our own DeBruce Career Corps as they expressed concerns about how their summer plans were going awry in 2020. For those of you who do not know, allow me to share a little bit about our DeBruce Career Corps. And congratulations to all of you, because we have almost 100% participation in our poll. Way to go. It is quite relevant to why we are here today with V-Ships. Rewind to May 2018. That year, the DeBruce Foundation engaged high schoolers, college students, and young professionals to help design a model integrating the voice of young people into our everyday work at the DeBruce Foundation, and to provide perspective and feedback on specific projects. Within the first 3 months, we had to solve for how to continue to meet when some individuals were headed back to school and meeting in person would be impossible. The members of the group, Francesca, who's one of our panelists today included, suggested we could actually meet regularly with them on Zoom. From the beginning, this DeBruce Career Corps model responded to the needs and schedules of those working together. So it's always relied on monthly Zoom meetings, a quiet precursor we found to virtual internships that are rapidly emerging under current conditions for everyone. In March 2020, our DeBruce Career Corps members began to report their internships, fellowships, and other summer plans for jobs were postponed for a year, being delayed indefinitely, or completely disappearing. We knew we had to do something for them and for others. Well, across Kansas City, other innovators, as you know, were also thinking about how to create opportunities virtually in this time. Anita Newton of Community America, where they sponsored 357 interns starting in March, was quoted as saying, quote, "My hope is that other businesses will follow our example," unquote. Also leading by example, Tyler Notberg and Desiree Sharp of US Engineering orchestrated ways to have 100% of their internships still occur this year. Commerce Bank also beat the national odds by leveraging virtual for their internships. Eva Finan reports they learned very quickly that students were able to virtually onboard and be committed to being productive. She states, quote, "Do not underestimate the ability of students," unquote. And Zoraya Laura of J.E. Dunn reports that they moved their formal development experiences for interns to the virtual environment. So they essentially have a blended model with, quote, 8 nationwide sessions that have been awesome so far, unquote. Obviously, Kansas City is leading the way. So let's see where we are with the poll. Where are you all? What does our audience look like today before I introduce you to our panelists? Should be able to see here what our poll is. Who do we have in the audience for our co-learners? Okay, it looks like an overwhelming group of you, about 1 out of every 3, have had at least a conversation about it. And some of you are considering yourselves experts. So welcome to all of you. And for those of you who haven't started yet, we are delighted to have you here today because it's really our goal with this V-Ships effort to inspire you to build or to start one or to build and enhance something that you already have to help us take to scale this opportunity across Kansas City and the nation. So today you'll hear from some of our leading experts in virtualizing internships, or as we like to call them, V-Ships. Fellowships, internships, apprenticeships, all are critical to expanding pathways to opportunities and preparing our future workforce. It's time with these panelists for us to demystify how this can work. And I'm honored today to be joined by William with KC Social Innovations, Veronica with STARTLAND, Kristopher with the Urban Leaders Fellowship, which is in 10 cities with 15 interns here in Kansas City, and Francesca, one of our very own DeBruce Career Corps members. We're gonna get started, as Veronica shared yesterday, of coming together and getting to a common definition to V-Ships through dialogue. William is gonna kick us off, and each of the panelists will take a moment to share with you a little bit about the program they have and their definition for V-Ships. William?
So first of all, it's an honor to be here. I'm excited to be speaking and meeting with the panelists. I think that we have a wonderful group of panelists. And yesterday when we initially got on the call, it was just amazing how we began to have dialogue and learn initially as we were setting up for this call. But as Leanne has mentioned, I am William Dowdell. I am the Director of Programming at KC Social Innovation Center. Over at the Innovation Center, we work in the space of education and workforce. We hope to bring a level of innovation as we bring those 2 worlds, or we say those 3 worlds together. Young people, employers, and educational systems together so we can create more opportunity and access to the workforce of tomorrow. With respect to the work we're doing at the Innovation Center, of course, like everyone, early in this spring, we had fully intended to sort of march through our 2020 season with what we call the traditional internship platform. And this is where we were, sending 200 plus young people into various organizations, entities, offices, to do a myriad of work and gain experience here in our region. We quickly found out in the early spring that we had to make adjustments as COVID was a sort of the linchpin to our theory of change. But as we were beginning to ideate what that would look like, I would say our theory of change was guided not only by what was going on throughout the world, but quickly we began to find that a lack of access followed a lack of opportunity, especially when we were with respect to internships. So we quickly realized that even our traditional internships would need to go virtual, and to make that happen, we needed to support our partners that we had worked with for the last few years. And so we quickly began to, in our office, ideate what could this look like? How can we support our employer partners? So we began to build toolkits that would help our employer partners make the transition into the virtual space. We also took into consideration support and content and skill building for our young people. And so as a part of our summer portfolio, we began to design a content component. And that content was built on readiness. And so we developed what we call the Work Ready Institute, which was really focused on just that, work ready, making sure that young people had those fundamental skills we felt necessary to move into the workforce. We also had what we call a skill builder aspect of our summer, and that was sort of our stage 2. And with the skill builder piece, we were really wanting to connect young people with leadership within our community, and then also really target specific work-ready skills to make them more competitive. And then finally, we were connecting young people to focus groups and client-connected projects that they would do during the 3rd stage of our summer programming. For our summer programming, like we've done traditionally, all aspects are paid. We think paying young people is very important. So for our Work Ready Institute and our skill building stage and our client connected project focus group stage, kids are being compensated $100 for the first stage, $150 for the second stage, and $200 and $300 for the 3rd stage. All of this, of course, is a part of our readiness pipeline plan, and we feel that this more than equips the young person to move into a traditional internship. We know that the term traditional internship is shifting and changing, so we feel it equips them to move into a traditional brick and mortar face-to-face internship or a virtual internship. But that's what we're doing over at KC Social Innovation Center.
All right, thanks, William. Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica Alvidrez. I'm Experience Manager over at STARTLAND. I focus on all the student-facing experiences that we offer. Our mission at STARTLAND is to really create a culture of innovation in Kansas City, and through our work in the education, this is how we reach students. So part of our work is offering entrepreneurial experiences during the school year. Typically, these events are in person, and with the shift of what happened and what hit us all in the springtime, we really had to get unique about how we were going to still reach students, how we can still bring value to our community in the way that we can, even if it is from home. And so we were very fortunate to have Anita Newton with Community America Credit Union really reach out to us and say, how can we do this? What can we do? And so we had a brainstorming session. We had no clue what we were doing. We didn't know if we were going to get 1 application or 50. Ended up getting more than 400 applications submitted. So we realized quickly, yeah, exactly, Chris, thanks. So we realized very quickly that there was a need and that our local youth wanted to be engaged somehow. Since then, things have moved very quickly. We've also collaborated with Entrepreneurship KC, with Delia Cherry and her project. And we offered a part of her experience. We collaborated with her there. And we also said, well, why not host our own and learn some more? So we hosted our own creative internship as a response to what we had gathered from kind of a listening tour we did at the early stage of COVID to really say, what are educators, teachers, parents, and students really going through? And so the creative internship was a response to that project. So thank you for having me here. I'm just really excited to be here and share with you what we've learned as we've kind of stumbled upon new opportunities and new ways to reach students.
Hi all, Chris Frye with the Urban Leaders Fellowship. Before I jump in, just a quick thank you to Leanne, our moderator, and the DeBruce Foundation for bringing together such an awesome space here today. Again, just bringing forth such a timely, but also a really forward-thinking topic. So kudos to you all. Thank you. Really excited to be here. And then William mentioned this, but even in just our short connection yesterday with the fellow panelists today, just really excited to hear more from you all and continue to learn. So thank you. And so Urban Leaders Fellowship, our flagship program is a 7-week summer fellowship. We place north of 120 fellows every year in 10 cities across the country, Kansas City being one. And so our program is really broken down into 2 chunks. And the first chunk is the first half of our fellows day during the summer. They're placed at a partner organization. And what this looks like is they're essentially community-centered organizations, might be nonprofits, government entities, schools. We really look for organizations and entities who are serving the public. And so in Kansas City, what this looks like is the Greenlight Fund, United Way, School Smart KC, Restart. And so that's the first half of their day. And then the second half, our fellows are partnered with a local elected or appointed official, and they build out policy. And so what this actually looks like is you spend half your day on the ground working with the community, and then you spend the second half of your day kind of in this larger atmosphere. What is the global context that surrounds the environment you're working in the morning? And so that's the structure of the program. And essentially, we might be a slightly different in that we actually target early to mid-career professionals. And so everyone in our program has at least 2 years experience. They're all post-college and a lot are post-graduate school. And they're really looking to explore what can public service look like or what can policy look like. And so that's the general overview on the program. And I'd say last thing really is just, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, would me, I, or the Urban Leaders Fellowship be sitting on a panel for virtual internships, it would be unequivocally no. And this is actually our 10th year as a program. And for our first 9 years, you were required to be in person. And we believe that was a vital component to it. And all of a sudden, just like everyone else has said, like March, April hit, and we went, there's no way we're flying 120, 130, 140 fellows to different cities across the country in the middle of a global pandemic. And so that made us squarely with a choice of, do we cancel our program for the first time in a decade? Or do we go back to the drawing board? Do we rethink? Do we innovate? Do we decide to take this on as an opportunity? And that is really exactly what we did. And we reviewed our entire program from top to bottom and said, what can we do virtually? Are there areas of risk in here? And really just took it on in a very systematic approach for reviewing our entire program. And at the end of it, we said, absolutely. Not only can we do this, we can do this at an exceptionally high level. And all our data is pointing, this is week 7 of our 7-week fellowship is today. And all our data is pointing at, not only was it the right choice, we're actually seeing areas of growth that we've had over the in-person experience. And so just really excited to share more a little bit about that today and learn from everyone else. So again, Chris.
That is awesome, Chris. I mean, I think it's so great that you've recognized how much of an opportunity these ships are. I'm Francesca Valente. I'm a communication major going into my senior year at Truman State University. I'm also a member of the DeBruce Foundation Career Corps, as Leanne gave me the shout out for. I'm so happy to be here, and big thanks to Leanne. Over the past 2 years, being a member of the Career Corps has been a huge opportunity for really building a foundation during my college experience. The Career Corps, as Leanne mentioned, we really had to figure out how we were still going to meet after we ended our in-person experience that summer of 2018. And so we meet every month. We have we have a Zoom meeting every month. And that really gives an opportunity to not only connect with the board members and provide feedback on any problem solving that they're doing within the foundation, but it also allows me the opportunity to connect with people that are my age or are experiencing different things along their college and career path, because it's not just college students that we're working with. We also have members of the Career Corps that are already working full-time jobs or trying to figure out how to transition into a job that they actually want. So when March hit and we didn't know what to do moving forward, I remember I was worried because my internship opportunities were drying up all around me. I was planning on moving back to Kansas City for the summer and to pursue an internship, but the DeBruce Foundation gave us an opportunity to complete a virtual internship called the Product Testing Internship with the Agilities app. And that, with the Agilities app, we were able to do modules every day for a month. And by completing these modules, we were allowed to receive knowledge about the things that the Career Corps had already been teaching us, with having a growth mindset in our professional development, knowing how to use tools to analyze job markets and how to apply our agilities to this ever changing world right now. So that was almost a class in itself and was really beneficial, not just for me, but for other people that I recruited into the internship that had no knowledge of virtual internships or what the DeBruce Foundation was doing, and could see the benefit of having access to an opportunity online. So that was a really beneficial experience for me. And one thing I want to mention with that is being a college student, paying rent at my own house and trying to get by, being able to work full time over the summer while also having a virtual internship opportunity to develop myself beyond just my customer service job has been just unspeakably just a blessing, because I can make money in two forms, and it's eased not having to move back to Kansas City. I can still have my roots in my college town, and it's a barrier of access for an internship that I was worried about that has alleviated that concern. So I think that moving forward, virtual internships are going to be really important for people who maybe don't have the means to uproot every time there's an opportunity. And I just want to speak on how paid internships are so important. Even going through the Career Corps, I would get a gift card every month. And some months before I got my job, that would pay my gas to go see my family in Kansas City. So you never know how much even a small amount of compensation can really affect a young person's life. And when they're transitioning into a new career, that can make them feel valued and can make them feel like they can just breathe a little bit more when they're trying to figure things out. So it's really important. Another thing I want to mention is when you're looking at how to keep people coming back to internships, from my perspective, what has kept me coming back to the Career Corps over and over again is the connection that I have to not only the work that the foundation is doing, but to the board members themselves. They have built such a beautiful personal relationship with me, and with all of the Career Corps members. We're like a little family, and we communicate every month and check in with each other. And I think that having that personal element moving on to a virtual experience, it's still important to keep that personal connection with the interns, and to know, to have that feeling insinuated or developed that you would in person, still to keep that same feeling that they're being valued and that they're connected to what your organization or company is offering.
Thank you, Francesca, Chris, William, and Veronica. As you all can tell, this is already worth your money and your time for being here, because so many nuggets of information have been shared. I'm going to ask a few questions of the panelists and facilitate just a dialogue with us. But we're also encouraging you all to put questions in the chat or in the question and answer section, and we'll try to cover some of those a little bit later during the dialogue. Veronica, U.S. Engineering cited buy-in from leadership and management as being key to making this a great experience for all involved. And so tell us a little bit, Veronica, how you all have been able to make an efficient, effective internship program in that space.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, we've been lucky that we have great leadership behind our educational work. So I'll first start there. As far as internally, and then our partners too, are just people who are really champions about helping the youth. The passion, it shows. You can't fake that. So I'll start there. With as far as what we found is really, being flexible. Your willingness to being flexible for these users. The peak hours of performance of when they're focusing on the work that they're doing, to the point that Francesca has made, their schedules are varying. Some of the students have jobs that they're maintaining or other responsibilities. So being flexible has been a huge component of all the models that we've kind of helped with. Another one of the things we have found is we're still in the learning phase. So we've launched all these internships, but we're constantly vetting the users. What did you think? How did you do? And I think going back to your users and constantly checking on their experience. not waiting until it's over and then say, oh, we should have done that, but really checking in with students. Again, to Francesca's point, making it personable. How are you doing? How's it going? Especially right now in a virtual setting, we don't know who's asking these questions. A lot of this counselship falls into school staff, right? And so being able to connect with students beyond just the tasks being done. Another thing we found is working with clear deadlines, because again, schedules are kind of all over the place right now. So having clear deadlines, but also making those deadlines with plenty of grace, especially if students are going to be working together or have time to sync up, that you've kind of built this into your model. And the biggest thing really, to keep them inspired, you know, with all the things happening right now, is igniting their passion, making sure that they're actually involved in something that they care about. You know, a to-do list is not the most inspiring of tasks for anybody. And so really asking yourself, how are we going to allow the youth to really engage and be creative in whatever we're going to offer them, versus talking at them or telling them what to do. So that's the big thing that we've recognized works and keeps them coming back.
Thank you, Veronica. And I know you really amplified some of the things Francesca had already said, but Francesca, from your standpoint as an intern, what has been really important from a management standpoint? What has helped you stay organized, you know, throughout your experience?
I totally agree with Veronica. I think flexibility is huge, because my schedule can be so tight sometimes, that having that flexibility for me to engage when I'm able to, but also not having that judgment if I have to miss a meeting, or if I communicate with you that I just can't do some things. And so having that ability to really communicate back and forth, to have an understanding of what is expected of me, and what I can do to overcome some of the barriers that I have. So from a management standpoint, it's really just somebody that, again, can establish that personal connection with me, and that won't judge me when I need help with something. And it kind of has like that teacher role. I think that, Leanne, you really fit that model, because you do have that educational background, and it really shows in your management of the DeBruce Foundation Career Corps that you are so passionate and caring, and even check in with us when it's not related to the foundation necessarily. Every meeting you're like, well, how are you doing? What can I help you with? And how is your life going? And that's so important, to just humanize us beyond little people in a screen. So
Thank you, Veronica, or thank you, Francesca. That's like so very kind of you to say. I'll make sure that my board gets to see that clip of this event. But you know, William and Chris, you all are managing and trying to have an effective, efficient operation across a variety of partners. So maybe Chris and William, maybe you could each speak a little bit to what does it look like to run that across a variety of partners?
Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in here, echo what has already been shared. But I think what we really focused in on was we have 100+ organizations that we're placing fellows with. And so how do we systematize and actually manage across all those variety of partners? And honestly, front load is like the key word here. And I feel like we front loaded all the planning. We try and actually in full advance, like, what is the project we're going to tackle on, or what are the projects? What is the sequence of it? We actually have a 7-week project plan already built out. And so we front load the planning, we front load the structure. Who is your manager? Who is your point of contact? Who are the support structures within the organization that allow you to, like, oh, I need this type of support, I go to this person, to have like that network or that web of support already built in. It's efficiency, and it helps you move through. And our thing is sometimes you see virtual interns, like they can be short. And so we focus on how do we get people up and running as fast as possible, and front loading is the key there. And then one thing that Veronica said that just like you were speaking my language was feedback loops. And I think like when we talk about like front loading structures, like if there's any fellows on this call right now, they're going to start shaking their head, because literally we do a pre-fellowship survey. We do every week, they get a new survey. There's a post-fellowship survey. There's a 360 review where they get feedback from it. We love feedback. And it really allows you to keep a pulse check on where folks are at, what they need, what barriers they're facing, and you can immediately respond and react and get into a position where people feel supported, you're building relationships with them, and all of a sudden you have this mutually beneficial relationship where your partner organizations, as we call them, like are feeling like they're getting tons of value, and simultaneously the fellow or the intern, whatever you want to call them, like they are simultaneously getting the exact same high level value, just in a different way. So just echo that piece.
Chris, that sounds like great advice to any and all of us who are working in the virtual environment now and managing teams and any kind of relationships in that. So that's kind of like you got a twofer there on that one. William, what about you and managing it with so many different moving pieces and parts and organizations?
Yeah, I think a lot of moving pieces and parts. I'm going to echo, it's the front loading piece. You know, we consider ourselves the kind of roadies to the band. You come and you enjoy the band, but you don't see all the work that happened behind. So front loading and prepping, I mean, it's just essential. But, you know, with us, those structures are going to be important. But a crucial part of this is skill building and supporting the young person and readiness. Right. And so, as I mentioned before, we do put a lot of work into readiness. So everyone who comes through and has an opportunity with us will have to go through the Work Ready Institute. And we're extremely intentional with the Work Ready Institute. And with respect to sort of the previous question and tying it into this question, we listen to what employers are saying. So when we're looking at the common sector competencies, and that's the work that Karen Chang was doing over at UMKC, Dr. Chang was doing at UMKC, and with the Civic Council and KC Rising, we wanted to hear what are those fundamental core skills you felt as an employer in our region that young people needed to have. And so when we went into building our curriculum, we built that curriculum with those skills in mind. And then finally, I think which really keeps it together is we have this layer of support through a coaching staff. So all of our young people are assigned a coach, but all of the supervisors who work with the young people are assigned a coach because a lot of supervisors, they don't have a lot of experience in housing an internship. So, you know, those structures, that support, and then finding out what employers are really looking for, those have been really strong components for us building what we think is an effective program.
Thank you. Well, and speaking of what people are looking for, William, I know that you mentioned early on that all of your experiences are paid experiences. So perhaps you and maybe Francesca, she also mentioned this, perhaps the two of you could expand a little bit on why it is important to find a way to offer these as paid experiences when we're talking about V-ships.
Yeah. Well, first of all, kudos to Francesca because she articulates what you know only a young person can really demonstrate because it's these sort of really small nuances of being a young person and navigating your way through the professional world. You know, gas money to come see my family, right? It sounds very simple, but it can be a big thing. But I think you know, when we look at, there are many reasons in which compensation is really important, but I sort of go back to my time as a high school English teacher. And as you know, what I found was I had some incredibly bright students that I felt would benefit from an internship experience, but they simply couldn't afford to take an unpaid internship experience. And so they were forced to work at a job that paid, which was not very robust, did not bring a lot of depth, although these types of jobs are important. I worked at a fast food place and I learned a great deal, but I know that a rich, deep, intentional internship experience, right, is going to help that student more in the long run. But quite frankly, I think that a paid internship gives young people the room and the space to be able to say yes to this type of experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, William. Thinking about even just having to pay for rent at my house while I'm not in it, to go to Kansas City to get an internship opportunity that may or may not pay, that was going to be a huge risk. So the likelihood of me being able to pursue an internship that didn't pay was very low. I don't think that I would have been able to do that. And it's a reality that a lot of college students are working at least one job to get through. A lot of them are working a regular job and a scholarship job and are putting in a lot of hours just to get by. So it's really important. I think that it's important to have a paid internship, but also with having a virtual internship, that alleviates more of the cost than a traditional internship, then is probably saving more money for that intern than having to actually go. Because Leanne mentioned this another day, with not having to buy professional clothes to show up to an office every day is huge for some people. Not having to worry about transportation to get there is huge for some people. So there are so many factors that having a virtual experience and opportunity can just erase some of those barriers to access, but not all of them. I don't know if you want to speak more on that, William, but yesterday when we were talking, you wanted to touch on some of the barriers to access that do come with virtual internships. It might be a good opportunity to open up with that.
Yeah, I agree, and I appreciate it. And I wanted to say, with respect to paid internships, the big piece for me is having a young person understand that their input and their involvement is valuable. So our office, the KC Social Innovation Center, and Hire KC as a program, is made better by the interns who actually work within our office and work with us. So we think they're a valuable component. And I would agree, Francesca. I think that although there are some persistent and nagging gaps that the virtual internship has not been able to address, I do see it as an equalizer, definitely an equalizer. And again, when we get into the small things of what to wear or time, or when one family is sharing a car, all of these things. And so I think that the benefits of a virtual internship with respect to access far outweigh any cons that we may find.
I appreciate that. We're kind of talking around what one of those barriers or gaps is, right? And I think it has to do with the access to high-speed internet, reliable high-speed internet. We know that 19 million people in our country, it was discovered as we were going through COVID, that's how many people don't have access to reliable high-speed internet. And also devices. And William, you kind of started to allude to this, even if there are 4 of us or 6 of us in a home, but we only have 1 or 2 devices or no devices. And I think you guys have done some things with making things, using platforms that people can use on smartphones and those kinds of things. But we may want to tee into our audience may want to hear a little bit about how to overcome, or what ideas and thoughts you all see going forward with how to address some of those tech challenges. And Chris, I might toss it to you. You had to completely revamp a virtual or a program to be virtual. And I've even heard you say, oh, we've done things that we're never going back. Like, we're not changing. But I also know that you've had to cross some barriers and some challenges. So perhaps you could start speaking to that, and others could chime in.
Sure. Thank you, Leanne. Appreciate it. I will definitely go there, but I have to one last time, just on this concept of paid versus unpaid, just because I'm thinking about our audience, and like so many of you have the opportunity to take on interns in some form or in some way, or some sort of virtual fellowship. If you have the opportunity to take on an unpaid intern, I would just caution against it, and just think that, like, though, who are the folks that are in position to take advantage of unpaid opportunities, and that the amount of talent you're missing out on, and the amount of access that is essentially being wiped away by saying it's only an unpaid opportunity, but it's really great. I would just caution against it. And I think there's really creative ways that we've seen across our entire 10-city network of even small organizations finding ways to even chip in a little bit of money. And we try and work with as many organizations as possible, that like we have a baseline stipend that everybody has to have. And so then this is how I'll connect it to Leanne's other question, which is like, have to have a baseline stipend that allows at least the main access to it, right? But then additionally, like, we just fundamentally believe that regardless of who you are, your background, where you come from, like, if you meet the bar to get into ULF, the Urban Leaders Fellowship, like, we want to do everything in our power to ensure you can fully participate in the program. And so we established a scholarship fund to help offset some of those other costs. That's like, I think Francesca even mentioned, like, I can't uproot my life to take on this amazing internship opportunity, or this amazing, like in a different location, in a different city, in a different whatever. And so we created a fund to essentially help offset those costs and allow folks to apply for, it's not a huge chunk of money, but believe me, that money that smaller amount goes such an incredibly long way. And so when we talked about, okay, what does it mean now if we're no longer flying people across the country, how do we repurpose these dollars in a really effective and intentional way? And so it went straight to what are the barriers our folks are going to face in terms of participation? And so the first immediate thing obviously is who has a computer? Who has reliable internet? Who has space to work? And these are just threshold questions before you even think about what does the experience look like? It's just the sheer ability to participate. And so we took all of that scholarship dollars and said let's support and make sure everybody is on the same at least baseline for the ability to participate. Those feel like our best spent dollars in the entire program. And when you support people in an individualized way and meet them where they're at and say we believe in you and we're going to help you and we are going to partner together to get you to fully participate, that's how you really lean into diversity and inclusion, right? And so I'd say the first thing we did was basically, how do we gather data and information to understand what are these barriers? And so we just surveyed all our participants. And using that, then we could triage and then create our application for apply for additional funding. And so it slowly trickles on from there. But as long as you can really start with what is the threshold ability to participate and how do we support getting all of our participants to that level, that's step one.
Well, I appreciate that, Chris, and I see even something coming up in the chat where I've heard this from others too. Some have just tried to even figure out that threshold with the staff who work for their organizations, and so and I think that we've certainly heard across Kansas City that's why some HR departments and others have, or small businesses and mid-sized businesses have been we just had to figure out the first thing that was happening with our employees as we needed to go virtual. So if any of you have tips in that space, I think that might be something. And certainly those of you who are in the audience, we're collecting all of your questions. If we don't get to all of them today, our plan is to have some frequently asked questions. And but I want to recognize that that is an issue too. You have to start with what that audit is for your own internal team in order to be able to offer those to others too. So that's very good. Other thoughts on those kinds of barriers or challenges or how you've overcome some of those?
Yes. So, over at the center, we basically deconstructed our internship, and we were trying to pull the internship apart and create as many opportunities within that internship. So creating, of course, these micro experiences, which were supported with readiness content. The second piece, and probably the most important piece, was we had to rebuild an entire platform, a multi-stage platform, but we said it had to fit within a phone, right? And so we understood that just so many young people did not have access to, or Americans in general, as you shared with your stat, didn't have access to a device. And if they had access to a device, they didn't have broadband access. And that was a major barrier. But when we looked at the data around having a phone, we saw that 72+% of high schoolers actually have a phone, not just access to a phone. And so what we began to really look at is how can we build engagement where from start to finish, someone can do all of our engagement just with a handheld device. And there's a lot of research out around, or some research I should say, around kids actually sharing opportunity by sharing devices. And so we really looked for what we call the sort of the lo-fi way to reach kids. And so just some of the anecdotal information that we're already getting back, some of the kids are using, again, those handheld devices to engage with our content. So that was a big, I think, moment for us and a big game changer.
So a couple of themes that are coming through the questions, you all that are online panelists, I'll try to share these with you. One of the themes is around funding. And I know, Chris, you started to talk about how to reallocate certain funds to make things happen. So if the panelists would like to speak something to like a funding structure or something that you had to think differently in order to be able to do this, that could be helpful. Another theme that's coming out is, how did you convince partners to do this with you? Because businesses pulled back and entities said, oh my gosh, again, we just have to figure this out for our own employees and we can't do interns. And so you guys may have some, tricks up your sleeve, but how did you convince others, or what would you say now to convince others? So a little bit about funding and what would you do to convince others to engage with you as businesses or others who had pulled back and aren't doing internships? Veronica, I'm going to start with you this time.
Great. So, okay, sounds good. So I think as far as, partners or convincing partners to do this, I think if you just, have a calling to offer something to young people and say this, we think this is of value, then for sure reach out to us at STARTLAND. We'd love to help you out and make this real for you. But really just, starting with your mission statement, and then it'll come together. So a little bit of risk here, like just your willingness to take just, be adventurous and go ahead and go for it. The learning comes as you go as well. You'll build something that you can hopefully do again, and rely on community partners like us to help guide you. But certainly, if the point here is to encourage you all, like, just go for it. The time is now. I mean, we have students aren't starting until Labor Day weekend, so we have time.
You're getting comments of love for that in Veronica, and also, you are definitely the reason we're even doing a V-Shapes roundtable today, and we're thinking about this as an initiative going forward, is we want to have people stay connected as co-learners in this space and to not be afraid to take that risk. And so those are, I really appreciate your lifting that and sharing that and volunteering to say, like, we're alongside with you. We can do this together. We believe that.
I'll jump in here, Leanne, real quick on I think it's part funding, part program. But to be transparent, I think this so far, the calendar year 2020 has been financially challenging for basically every organization we partner with, including us, who have also seen a 10 to 15% drop in our total revenue for the year, which is huge, right? We're talking about small scale organizations trying to figure out how to extend your dollars as far as possible. I love the phrase, every dollar has a job. And so what we found, even just, I think we anticipated a larger cohort this year. We've continually gotten bigger each year. And we had a lot of our partners say, like, we just can't. We either don't have the funds, or like this funding stream is cut. And frankly, interns or fellows for us, like, that's the first on the chopping block. And so the idea being, okay, how do we loop back? How do we partner with you? How do we make this happen? And really, what's our sale? And I would just encourage everybody, like, the people are our sale. Whether you're in high school, whether you're in college, whether you're post-college, like, people are the power here. And like, we just go straight back to, let me tell you what our folks can do. Let me tell you the output we have. And what we try and do specifically is, what is product outcomes, or what are deliverables that our folks have delivered to other entities in similar situated positions. And we share that with them. And we sell our fellows and say, like, we believe in our folks, and we think you should too. And then it's just like us as an organization being willing to work with you to say, how much can you provide? What can this look like? Are there other creative ways we can think about funding? Those are all things that, like, routine conversation with all 100+ partners we've had this year. So if you're in that boat, like, you're definitely not alone.
And I would say over at the Innovation Center, our theory of change is guided by, I would say, one, the fear or the projection of a workforce shortage coming in 2030. And so we are keen in our understanding that we are building that workforce. We understand that brown and Black folks will increase by 88% within the workforce. And so we think that readiness is an imperative and needs to happen now. I think with respect to pulling in partners, and funding follows partners, but I think we've taken the decentralized mission approach and understanding that, beginning to understand more about our partners. And so some of the work with us really consists of figuring out what's important to partners throughout our region and throughout the country, and then attempting to see where our missions align. So in essence, we are reaching spaces that they are just not equipped to reach. And so we can do some of the work for our partners that they wish they could do, but they just don't have the mechanics to do. So I would really say mission alignment has really helped us in finding more partners to work with and pulling new partners into the change community, and also being intentional around attacking the forecasted gap in the workforce by 2030.
I appreciate that outlook because I think, William, what you're alluding to is we have some short-term emergency urgency, but there are long-term goals that we also all have to keep in mind as it relates to this. And so to not lose that vision of what is going to continue to be needed a decade from now. So I really appreciate that. And that's probably a really great segue for us to go to having each of you as panelists take 1 or 2 minutes to give any, this is just the advice that you have to have a V-ship, or one of the questions came up about how has having a V-ship changed the culture of your organization. So if you want to speak to either changing the culture or just a piece of advice that everybody needs to leave with today, I'll start. And I'm really just going to go down the line with William, Veronica, Chris, and then Francesca, and I'll close us out. So William?
Yes, so I would say the little nugget that I would leave is as we begin to move more and more into the space of the V-ship. I love the V-ship, and it's open. It's about different opportunities on this virtual plane. We've discussed it before. We have to continue to ideate around what that means. We have to continue to develop that space. And I would say when you are looking at building your own experience or partnering with an organization to build your own, to have an experience, we should make sure that that experience has endurance, has leverage, and has readiness, right? And so we want to make sure that that experience is going to stick with that person for the long haul. We want to make sure that that person can leverage those experiences in other contexts. And then we also want to make sure that readiness is always baked in. If that young person is a junior in high school, how does that help them with respect to their readiness for being a senior? Or how does that help them with their readiness for an internship? So I would say, yeah, that would be my little nugget. And then the other piece is when we end up with Francesca, Francesca embodies the work that we are all doing, right? We are building pipelines. And I think that it's apparent to see by just listening to her be able to articulate and represent, I think, interns across the nation, that we're really building a strong pipeline, and these types of opportunities work.
Veronica? Thanks, William.
Thanks, William. I would add that, for those of you, again, considering to do this, to offer this to students, you may not have the idea fully thought out there yet, but do not underestimate the value your network will bring these students. That is one of the biggest components that you can include into your experience that has value beyond the limited time they'll be spending with you. And so we know that opportunities come from those that we know. I mean, myself professionally, all the opportunities I've had been through some connections. And so even if it's that much of and again, to Francesca's point of making it personable, actually take the time to meet the students, to get to know them, to let them leverage your network to find other mentors who can kind of put them under their wing. So the more we can expose young people to our community. And I just want to say, if you're thinking about doing this, make sure that you are building those moments within the experience.
And that is a great reason for us to all stay connected. And we'd love for you guys to connect with us even on our website, because we think we can together be a richer network for this work going forward. Chris?
Thank you. And I saw a note pop up. I would love, and I'm sure all of us would, but I would personally love to connect with anybody that wants to go deeper on it and continue learning myself. So please reach out. Kristopher at urbanleadersfellowship.org. And then the one thing that's really standing out to me, I feel like we've talked a lot about how we start this and how you just get off the ground and how you launch. And I feel like if I really go back to the March, April decision of us revamping and thinking or just analyzing our program from top to bottom, it was really scary to say okay, let's go virtual. And what we didn't anticipate and didn't expect was all of a sudden we found ourselves in this incredibly innovative space where we could rethink every aspect of our program. Basically, we had this big fear that if you weren't in person, you weren't going to build culture, and you weren't going to be able to attend the happy hour, and you weren't going to be able to do this, and you weren't going to be able to have the water cooler conversations or pop by Leanne's desk and say, hey, Leanne, how's your morning? How was your weekend? What did you do? And you'd lose those things. You can still have all of that and more. And in fact, what we've seen this year, I would say in the last 3 weeks, we have had more broken down barriers as far as cross-regional, cross-city, cross-organizational collaboration. We've had more of that in the last 3 weeks than the last 3 years. And so as I think about what does this mean going forward, even if we're back in person next summer, which we don't know, we'll see. I know for a fact that we are going to take so much of what we learned taking our program virtual, and we're going to replicate it again next year. And there are going to be elements in a permanent fashion for us that are always going to be virtual now because we've found so much value in them. And back to the feedback loops, our participants, our fellows, our partner organizations, our elected and appointed officials, they are similarly sharing the same feedback that it was incredibly cool that I got to hear from so-and-so city councilor member in Oakland or in Atlanta or in Kansas City or in Nashville, and this cross collaborative, if that's a word, collaboration opportunities. It has been really neat and really cool. So that would be my last plug for taking the lead.
Thank you. And we're down to less than 1 minute. So we want to point to you and that there is a survey that we would love for all of you to take. There is a great deal of interest in staying connected to all of you as panelists too. So please make sure that you fill out the survey, even give us your information if you'd like to stay a part of this co-learning community that we are kicking off here in Kansas City. You will be the honorary first group of members of it, and we're excited about that. And I know that Veronica or that Francesca is going to take us home with just an amazing closing comment here. So as we're carrying up to stay connected and visit our website and again to continue this journey together, Francesca, what's really important from an intern's perspective?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for all of the information that they've shared with us today. I think that all of us being here really speaks to how important virtual co-learning spaces are, and that this webinar alone just shows how much we can communicate and connect and really figure this out together. So from an intern's perspective, I just really appreciate that I have opportunities even from my home to connect with people. I'm always looking for mentors. I think Veronica did a great job of speaking to that it is really about just connecting and making sure that we are co-learning throughout this experience. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all for being with us today, and a huge thank you to our Wellington team, our Linson Associates team, our DeBruce Foundation team, and most importantly, our panelists and all of you in our audience. It has been a joy, and we are delighted to be on this journey with you. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.